Hello everyone and welcome to Yin Yoga for Youngsters Part 2. Well done for coming back, and if you haven't done the first part, head to there before you come on to our second class. So we're going to be again exploring 3 yin shapes a day into those 2-minute holds, and our first shape is child's pose. So traditionally, it's big toes together, knees towards the longer edges of the mat. But as Yin Yoga really helps to explore, there's a huge variation in human form. So some of us might like those knees close together, inner thighs touching, and then anywhere between there and the long edges of the mat. I love long edges of the mat. But if you're not sure, have a play, have an experiment. Bringing the palms of the hands to the earth just for a moment before we come into the full expression of the shape. And I want you to just gently stick your bottom out. So we're rolling that pelvis forward. And then we're going to come all the way down, head to the earth, forehead to the earth. If the forehead isn't meeting the earth, put it on a block or cushion. If the knees aren't so comfortable here, try a cushion between the knees, or maybe it's the ankles that might like a little padding with a blanket. One really nice thing you can do here is hug a bolster. And this shape just simply isn't working for you, you can come onto your back, bring the feet to the earth, knees bent into a shape called constructive rest. But I'm hoping most of you can find this shape, child's pose. And for most of us, the sensations and stretches on the tissues are reduced in child's pose, but you might notice gentle sensations into the inner groin, lower back. And often those quieter sensations are the ones we don't immediately hear or we dismiss as not important. See if you can take your breath into those areas where you feel the gentle stretch. Maybe when you notice as you breathe in, even that stretching sensation increases, and as you breathe out, there's maybe a softening and backing away from that. In yoga, that's slower, stiller practice, giving us the time to tune in and to notice these things. It also provides opportunity for the mind to go crazy. Like the stillness means we've got to listen to all those thoughts that arise in the mind, which they will because you're human. Acknowledge their presence and come back to just focusing on your breath. I'm going to be here for one more breath. And then coming up to a tabletop position, bring the knees in slightly, so they're about hips distance apart, and the hands underneath the shoulders. Checking in those elbows soft. I'm just going to take a few rounds of cat-cow. Exhale, rounding the back. Inhale, melting the heart. Exhale, pushing the earth away, rounding the back. Inhale, melting the heart. A little bit of dynamic movement, a little bit of yang within our yin. You can think of the yang and the yin as a masculine and the feminine. And there's elements of feminine within the masculine and masculine within the feminine. It's like those lines of energy are blurred. No straight lines in the human body. No definitives. I'm going to come into a shape called cobra. So finding yourself onto your belly now. I'm going to bring the forearms to the earth and the elbows underneath the shoulders. Now, you might be familiar with this shape from your yang practices. We're again doing this different, so just check that the legs, the glutes are relaxed. The targeted area is to this lower back, so there is compression here. Just checking in, does this feel good? Does this feel too much? Maybe lightly pressing into the forearms and lifting the heart. Or maybe backing off because it feels too intense into the lower back and coming lower down. But do practice this cobra. Relax legs, relax glutes, relax belly. Maybe very different to how you've previously done a cobra shape if you've done a lot of vinyasa styles. So don't immediately assume that this is right and this is wrong, or vice versa. It's just different. Checking in at the sensations in the lower back. Is that eustress? We're at that edge. Sometimes it's referred to as the Goldilocks zone. But just the right amount of stress for positive change. And maybe if you've heard of yin yoga, but you've not practiced yin yoga before, you might be surprised to hear me talk about stress onto the tissues. I thought it was this soft, gentle practice, of which it can be, absolutely. But it can also be really challenging. The challenges may be different than holding plank for 30 breaths or something like that. But finding the edge that's right for you in this present moment and holding the shape in the stillness. Or the mind maybe telling you other things. Really challenging. And there comes a point when we realize that once we've mastered, say, a sequence like the Surya Namaskar, sun salutation, that action of doing, that real physical action of doing, maybe it's a hell of a lot easier than the stiller stuff. Let's take one more breath. We're going to rebound from this shape of cobra to come onto our fronts into like a reverse shavasana. So bringing the forearms into each other, resting the head on the forearms. Checking in once more that the belly, glute, thighs are relaxed. More often in these areas we grip unintentionally, unnecessarily, waste energy. Notice if you're thinking, when are we moving on to the next shape? What's happening next? We're going to finish today's class with a dragon lunge, which is a fierce, or can be a real fierce yin shape. So pressing back to kneeling just for a moment, I recommend finding your blanket to pad the knees. So that's what I'm going to do. I have princess knees. They like padding. And then we're going to just step forward. Let's step forward with our left leg. Bring the left knee in line with the ankle for now. Bring the hands to the pelvis. So what I want you to do is just drop your pelvis down. So a mild posterior tilt to the pelvis. And notice how you may already be getting a nice stretching sensation into that right quadricep, front of that right thigh there. And if you've got any knee issues or this does enough, you may stay here. Otherwise, you might like to dip into the pelvis and increase the stretch in the tissues. Now, options here. Sometimes, although I like to, where possible, practice yin yoga without muscular energy. In this shape, if I'm not using any props, which we're not, I probably would invest in a gentle hug in the midline, so bringing that right hip forward, left hip back. Gently drawing navel to spine just to support you into this shape. Checking in with this left knee. Maybe the hands are going to stay on this front thigh, or maybe they'll find the floor. Or maybe I'm going to do it just because they happen to be here and I love my bricks. You use bricks to give yourself a little bit of space. So strong stretching sensations in the target area of the quadriceps and hip flexors. These are like, you know, I call them the stand to attention areas of the body, the bossy areas of the body. Shoulders can be a bit like that as well. But when we have a sympathetic nervous system response, like, oh, do I need to run? Do I need to fight? That is often charged into the quadriceps and hip flexors. Also, just in the Western world, this is my love too, nothing wrong with it, I appreciate it, but I do spend a large degree of the time sat in the car driving, or maybe sat on a chair. And these are actions that can also serve to tighten into the hip flexors and quadricep muscles. So isn't it great that we can undo these patterns? Find balance action in the body. So that child's pose shape we did at the start of the class, you may have noticed, was for most of us probably a softer shape. This is quite intense. It's a great example of how yin yoga can be hard. We're going to be here for one more breath, and then we're going to counter pose by slowly. Remember, yin is that slow practice, coming out, maybe coming onto the heel of that left foot and just stretching back here, stretching into the back of the body, back of the legs. And the great news is we get to do this to the other side. So swapping sides, bringing your other leg forward. Again, I would start. You see, the challenge is you know where you're going now. But I would start into this more upright shape. And we're going to drop the sit bones down and notice how that might already be opening into the front of the pelvis here. And this might be enough for you, or this might be a really great place to stay if you've got any issues with the knee. Otherwise, dipping forward into the pelvis, finding that edge that feels good. Noticing if your yin teacher doesn't turn the timer over, you're like, this is a strong pose. Don't have me in here longer than I need to. So I often when I'm practicing in this shape in a longer period of time, I often put a bolster under this back leg, which allows me to surrender any muscular action. But without the bolster, I definitely benefit, because otherwise I just sink too deep into the pelvis. It all feels too much. From drawing left hip forward, right hip back, a little bit of muscular energy. So, as I said, I do try. There's lots of debate as to whether you should stretch with muscles relaxed, stretch with muscles engaged, and some schools of yoga are very passionate on one way and the other. And what I know about the human body, that we're all different, we're all unique. There isn't a definitive. And most of us benefit from doing things lots of ways. Not always giving our body that same information. When we do things differently, we disrupt patterns, habits. I can't remember who it was that said this, but I was doing some training once and someone said, well, you know, do things differently and it's gold dust for the nervous system. And I was like, oh, I just love that. Firing up new neurons. It's intense. We're nearly there. Well done, guys. One more breath, and then we push back slowly. counter-posing rebound by just straightening that front leg. And then coming to any comfortable seat. Well done. That's part 2. Yin yoga for youngsters done. I really hope I'll see you for part 3.